I had started to make like more and more connections with like other consultants, experts, thought leaders. And yet I couldn't figure out how they were making the kind of money they were making. So I figured the best way to ask these people is going to be in a private conversation, a private conversation that I then get to air with other people. They get to promote themselves and I get the answers. Like I said, I didn't start the show to share all of this with listeners. It was like, just wanted to know.
Three, two, one. Welcome to the Campfire Circle. I'm your host, Tanya Bhattacharya, and I empower purpose-driven women in building influential personal brands that drive change and raise revenue. We all talk about getting a seat at the table, but why though? Who wants to sit in a stuffy boardroom anyway? Let's reimagine the ultimate space of leadership as a campfire circle, where we share stories that inspire movements, build brave communities to huddle together with for warmth, and where there is always room. Come sit with us.
So I'm here with Claire Pelletreau, who simplifies the complex world of Facebook and Instagram advertising to help her clients create a major impact in their business. And she's the host of the popular Get Paid podcast, where she asks successful business owners the questions we all want to ask, such as, how much money do you make? And how much do you have to pay to make that money? So Claire, welcome to the Campfire Circle podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh my goodness. I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, 100%. And, I was geeking out a little bit before we hit record, but I'm just going to continue geeking out because I got to tell you that the Get Paid podcast is like in heavy rotation over here as a, relatively new entrepreneur. I've listened to every episode since I discovered it. And I already can, this conversation is going to be a little weird for me, good weird, because I'm so accustomed to your voice after listening to you for probably hundreds of hours that it feels like I've broken some kind of fourth wall situation and I'm somehow entered the podcast. So sorry if I come off as weird at any point, but I'm just weird. It is what it is.
Hey, that's great. I was saying earlier, you said, oh, I don't want to be weird here, but I know your voice. And that is, I said, no, please say it more. I love hearing that. I don't hear it, I get it a couple times a year, I would say. And it is the biggest compliment because it means not just that you like the show, but it's become a part of your business.
Yeah.
And that's not what I necessarily set out to do with the podcast, but it is an awesome byproduct. And it's more about it's more like what I want for it now.
Yes, 100%. Because it's such an intimate venue. It's when I listen to it, I feel like I'm a fly on the wall of these really intimate, powerful conversations. And I'm all about it. I'm all about it. So let me back up for a second here, because I know on your show, you are a great interviewer. You really get to the heart of people's stories, what they've been through, how they've overcome those things, all kinds of stuff. But I want to know more about your story. What have you grown through to now become the guide that you are today?
Oh my gosh. I feel like the biggest thing that I've grown through is low self-confidence. That has plagued me for my whole life. I'll be 40 next year. And I would say only until recently that I suffer from crippling self-doubt and low self-esteem. And people are always shocked when they hear that because
I am.
Yeah. So, I'm an outgoing person. I like to be the center of attention, but so people are just surprised that this doesn't come from a lot of even now, even talking about it, I find oh gosh, Claire, say the right thing. I don't think I've had a podcast episode like this, by the way, in a while where somebody's I know you. So I think I feel seen already. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just I don't know why I thought so little of myself for so long. And it took, I'm mostly dependent on other people's kind words, other people's external validation before I actually started believing those things myself. And I have been in therapy for so long, and I've never really gotten to the root cause of that.
Well, you're on the path, right? Healing is not a destination, it's a journey. And so it emerges over time. Thank you for sharing that with me. I feel honored that you do that. And I got to reflect something back to you that I think so many of us struggle with these issues. And to have a podcast like yours where people are just sharing their journey, their story, how much they make, how much that their failures, it shows us that it's okay to fail. It's okay to have low self-confidence and do it anyway, like do the thing anyway. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm so proud of you for trudging the road and creating what you have in the world. So I want to know a little bit more, because as thought leaders, like there's so many venues to put out our thought leadership. There's podcasts, but you could have written a book, right? You could have had virtual conferences. There's so many other things that we can play with. Why a podcast? Why did you decide to start a podcast?
Well, that's a great question. So when I started the podcast, I was living in Argentina. I lived in Buenos Aires for 10 years from the age of like 23 to 33. And honestly, I felt very far away from online business, even though like literally it's all online. And, so many people who I met then are still like my close friends now. But I had started to make like more and more connections with like other consultants, experts, thought leaders. And yet I couldn't figure out how they were making the kind of money they were making. So I figured the best way to ask these people is going to be in a private conversation, a private conversation that I then get to air with other people. They get to promote themselves and I get the answers. Like I said, I didn't start the show to share all of this with listeners. It was like, just wanted to know. I was seeing all these Facebook ads at the time. This was 2015. Yeah, 2015. I was seeing all these ads about, making six figures. And I was like, but what is the business model? What is the offer? How much are you charging for that offer? How many people do you have to have on your list in order to make enough sales of that offer in order to get six figures? And the big question, because I think in 2014, which was my first, like not even full year in business, but when I finally went full time, I probably only made like $25,000 and maybe spent close to all of it. So it was like, how much are you spending in order to make that six figures? So I just, those kinds of conversations, they're still to this day hard for me to ask those questions. And so I feel like the best venue is in a one-on-one conversation that I then get to turn around and share with people. And you will not catch me dead on video all the time. I am very vain. So, and yet I don't act that way. Like I don't get myself together very often. I have two young kids. So yeah, it was not going to be like a bunch of Facebook lives, which was popular
and
back
still
then.
are. Or I guess it's morphed into Instagram lives, but you're right. Money is such a tender topic.
Right.
Before this, I was I'll just say I was a fundraiser. And so money is a tender topic and a lot of charge comes up around it. So you're right. Like this intimate container is a beautiful way to start talking about it, but still provide that insight to everyone that you get to do through the Get Paid podcast. So, you mentioned that moment of, making $25,000 in your business, but also spending that to make that. So I'm curious if there was, maybe it's that moment, but was there any specific moment that led you to say, okay, let's start exposing like what is happening under the hood of these online businesses? Like, let's stop this bullshit and let everyone know like what is going on here.
I can't say that there was a specific moment, but, at the time I was running ads for clients. I have been a Facebook and Instagram ad consultant since 2014, working on those types of campaigns even before that in my full-time job and a couple different jobs. So I was seeing the spend on people's campaigns and in their launches. And they weren't like crazy. It wasn't like spend $900K to make $1 million. I wasn't seeing things like that, but there were so many times with clients where the spend would be a lot higher than, actually it was more like the revenue was lower than they expected given the spend. And I just started seeing, this is over the years though, started seeing the way people would start doing a strategy. It would really go well. then it would stop doing so well. And like the industry as a whole would freak the fuck out. And then it would happen again. And then it was like, oh, well, there's this other thing. And oh my God, look at the ROI on those ads. And then, and still to this day, that is happening. So like, it's not like that really made me go, oh no, I have to talk about it. But it made me want to keep talking about it. That's for sure.
You know, especially with all the changes in ads that have been happening over the last couple of years. But, you know, I want to ask you a question before I get into that. I recently read that female entrepreneurs pay themselves on average $53K less per year than male counterparts do. And I'm just curious if you've heard from any listeners, guests, you know, how your podcast has helped them pay themselves more, ask for more, or otherwise just change their money mindset.
You know, I wish that I could say, oh, I hear that all the time, because I would love to know that specific impact. I should straight up ask my listeners on the next episode for people to tell me that specifically. But really, so I haven't heard that. And what I really want to know is, okay, if female entrepreneurs are paying themselves $53,000 less, how much are these male entrepreneurs paying themselves? Because I mean, like I pay myself about $100,000. Right? Now, my husband pays himself more. His business is at least 3 times the size of mine in terms of revenue, way beyond that in terms of team, things like that. So, but I don't necessarily think of those things as being like that's apples to oranges because of different types of business size, things like that. But like, is it about women holding on to their profits more and putting them back into the business, or are they making less? Like, that's my question there. Is it that they have lower revenue, or less revenue, or is it that they're paying themselves less? Somebody recently joined my coaching program, and I was a little bit shocked when she said, I haven't paid myself anything out of this business. She makes like 500,000, or I think last year she did 500,000. I was like, well, what the fuck are you doing this for? Like, why? But she seemed great and happy and like excited to learn about ads and things like that. So, okay, to each their own, but I'm in this for the money to myself in my pocket. So yeah, I can't tell you
really
about
interesting
that.
to me. I would love to know the behavior difference. Maybe that can be something. Yeah, I would love to explore that more. But you know what's even more interesting to me is that people, and I guess I have to take some responsibility because I don't know that I have ever reached out to you and said, your podcast changed my life, but it did. And so it's like, why don't we reach out to share these things? Maybe we don't have the time. Maybe we think we're going to be perceived as weird, you know?
I definitely get messages from people who love it. And that means so much to me. It seems to me what they say is, I've learned so much. And then I want to be like, what have you learned? What specifically? And I don't typically get that answer. We've had a couple episodes on the show where like, I know exactly what they're talking about when they say, oh, I listened to the Brooke episode. And so I'm like, okay, I see. I know what happened to you. And that is one specific episode. For example, Brooke Castillo was on my show a few years ago. And that year, this was a while ago, that year she had done 17 million. So I think just that changed what people even considered was possible. I know for me,
I think you just summed it perfectly. It changes what you think can be possible for you because it shows you examples of people actually doing it. You know, there's that saying, you can't be what you can't see. And when people are saying, I made $17 million in revenue, and there's somebody kind of just like you, or at least perceived to be someone just like you know, they don't have like a giant team. They don't have, you know, all these other resources that maybe some of these other companies do. It's like, oh, that is available to me. So it's a mindset shift. It's a paradigm shift more than anything else. But I can tell you as a listener, like as a regular listener, it's given me a lot of examples of other models of business, which has been really helpful as I try to figure out how to productize. So like right now, I only do VIP days. I went through Jordan Gill's program and I love VIP days, but it just gives me like little clues and breadcrumbs on what else might be out there for the future. Like one of the episodes that really stuck with me is the one about focus sessions. And I'm blanking on the name of the person right now. I should have looked at it before. Megan Flatt, yes.
Megan Flatt.
Yes. And so I love the concept of how her product is like, let's just get to, like, we don't need to learn more. We just need to be more, do more. Let's get together and just do co-working because we are inundated with information and knowledge and we can't integrate it. It's coming at us too fast. So let's actually like literally just do the work that we need to do instead of always just having more stuff, more stuff. That was a huge one for me. Yeah.
I was so jealous. I hadn't thought of that. So jealous.
I know. I signed up for her thing and yeah, I love it. I love it. So, but really like this is one of the interesting things about podcasts. Like you can't always, unlike ad spend, right? You can't always know or really fully measure the ROI because some of it is just like people are going to have a behavior change and they're not necessarily going to share that back with you, but they're living a different life because of your podcast, right? So, but you know, if I had this result, I trust and believe that hundreds of other people, thousands of people maybe are having that same result because your podcast, I just checked, is in the top 0.5% of podcasts worldwide, according to Listen Notes. Listen Note.
Where did you find
Listen
that?
Notes.
Listen
yeah, if you go to
Note?
Listen Notes, it tracks like all the podcasts. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, mine's in the top 5%, which seems a little high to me. Like, I don't know if these numbers are skewed or what, but
right. And I mean, it's just, there are so many podcasts that were from like 2009, you know, that have been abandoned or that maybe they had like one episode.
I know.
What does it?
I know.
What
I know.
counts,
and I tend to be the kind of person that relies less on like quantitative data, which is weird as a marketer because, you know, people want that. But if I feel like this is working, then that's it for me. But then again, I'm not in the ad space. I'm in like thought leadership. So it's just different, you know?
But let me tell you how you can figure out if it's working or not. The like podcast, because it took me a really, really, really long time to just start identifying, is this investment of time and some money in producing this show actually gaining any kind of ROI? Because I quit. You know, have you heard those episodes where like I basically quit the podcast for a while and I brought it back? Yeah, it's weird. On Apple Podcasts, you like can't go back to my earliest episodes. I did 50 episodes and then the show took a 3-year maternity leave and then came back. So there's, I don't know how many, it might be 20 or so that don't appear to be visible on Apple Podcasts, but like on my site, they're there. But like what I finally started asking people every time I sold anything, like, for example, even right now, I have the cart open for one of my courses and in the form that people fill out after buying, right? So I know I'm not going to get all the data. We used to ask, how did you find out about Claire? But now it's just like a checkbox. Do you listen to the podcast? Yes or no? And I know that the vast majority of the people who are, you know, coming in now, I'm sure that most of them are listeners of the podcast. And that's what I saw when I launched my mastermind, when I was enrolling a previous program. So anyway, like that is almost the only way to figure out, is this working or not?
Right. And they already know, like, and trust you. So when you come out with something like Workshop Magic, which is what you're in the middle of a launch for right now, it's like, of course, like if anyone's thinking of launching a workshop, it's like, duh, like, why would of course, it's like an easy hell yes. So, and I get that. So I want to know, you're an ads expert. So how has ads played a role in the growth of your podcast?
You know, I only started using ads to grow the listenership in 2019, which was when that Brooke Castillo episode kind of blew up a little, when like, you know, teeny tiny bit viral, AKA it started bringing in a lot of, oh, hey, I heard that episode and I think, you know, I would be great for the show. I got a lot of those emails from dudes. But now, you know, so like I would spend here and there on individual episodes or I had a carousel ad going for a long time. But I really couldn't tell if they were working or not. I just was very attracted by the vanity metrics of like, oh, well, this cost per click is insane, which is one of the metrics that you look at when you're running ads. How much is it getting you just to get a click on the ad or getting somebody to go visit my site, right? But in 2021, Facebook ads changed. They've been changing over the years. They've been getting more and more expensive. In 2020, we saw a drop in prices because a lot of advertisers were leaving the platform because of financial reasons when the pandemic hit. Also, there were more and more people on social for like a very, very long time when we're all in lockdown. So ad costs dipped then, but then they came back up as they always do. And I was like no longer able to run the types of ads that I used to, which were list building ads. I myself at this moment can't run list building ads because the costs for my ads, the cost for somebody to run ads about ads, which people are very skeptical about, they're so high that my conversion rates or my prices on the back end, they don't like actually support that strategy. I would spend, maybe $2,000 to get $1,000 sale. Like that didn't make any sense. I would be growing my list, which was good. And, people would buy later on, but it just became impossible. So I said, okay, well, what can I start promoting that's going to be a lot cheaper, but still brings people into my world and, really helps them through that trust process quickly. And I was like, oh, right, the podcast. But I did an experiment at some point in 2021 to really, really track, like, okay, if people are clicking on these ads, are they really then clicking to listen to the show? And they were not. So I made a tweak and I started driving people to a different way of listening to the show. And I'm not going to give all of this away because I'm speaking about it at a conference in the fall. We're going to be including it inside my Facebook ads course. It's just like a very, very specific way to run the ads. And you're able to track the actual results. So that's where I spend all my money these days. Like even in the ramp up to this launch, we did some very specific podcast episodes that supported the launch. And then I just ran those ads to that particular episode to cold audiences just to get more and more people kind of interested in that topic and then potentially subscribe to the show.
That's super helpful information. I'm going to need to pop into this conference in September or buy your course because I've been figuring out do I need an ad strategy for the Campfire Circle podcast? And what stops me, and this might get a little bit again, weird or tangential. The reason that I have this aversion to ads, it has nothing actually to do with the ads themselves. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. So before I started this business, which is like a quasi online business, I worked in the addiction treatment field, mostly as a fundraiser, but I also did like some marketing, And, after the Affordable Care Act was passed, this influx of venture capital money came into the sector. Rehabs just popped up overnight, but they didn't have the reputation or the trust that they needed to fill their beds right away. And so many of them invested heavily in Google ads, primarily, maybe some Facebook ads too, but heavily Google ads to the point where it drove up cost per click or keyword prices to like many, many thousands of dollars for these keywords. And these smaller nonprofits, mom and pop, community-based grassroots organizations, they couldn't compete. And that's one thing. Like that's one thing over here. But the really shitty thing is that a lot of these new places that had popped up overnight were actually like actively exploiting insurance policies and just doing some really illegal things. And to the point where in 2017, Google actually stopped, like you couldn't advertise on Google anymore as an addiction treatment provider. Now they can. You have to go through this like legit script certification. And so all that's to say, I've seen ads contribute to some really awful consequences. Nothing against ads, right? But I just think it's an interesting thing because so many of us are transitioning from a 9-to-5 corporate job and transitioning into launching our own online business. There's this huge wave of entrepreneurship. And there's some things we have to change our mindset around, and I just have to tell myself, like, I'm providing something different now, right? Like when people run ads to their podcast or provide incentives, for example, like nobody can die from our services. It's a different thing. Online businesses and behavioral healthcare are not the same. And so all that to say, I'm curious, have you been seeing the same rise in entrepreneurship and people having to change their mindset around ads?
Ads have always gotten a bad rap. Always. And it comes from a ton of different places, I think. I have not heard a story like that before. That's why, so-and-so isn't interested in ads. I get a lot of people who say, I tried ads. They were a total flop. They feel kind of cheated by Facebook. Or, God, this happens all the time, is somebody hires an ad consultant, an ads manager, whatever you want to call them, and they don't get results. And so they don't actually know if it was the person. They tend to blame the person. But there are also really shitty ad managers out there. There are shitty influencers who have sold products that like barely teach running ads in a smart way. Like I think that exists in general. But I also know that some people feel that advertising is like cheating, like that they need to achieve their success, their audience growth, their revenue growth, whatever it is, organically, because that's like the true sign of that's, I don't know. I don't know what they think it is. It's just like, but it's talk about, that mindset of success can't be easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And some people they've run ads, but the audiences or whoever the people that they got were really the wrong fit, or so they felt. And therefore they were like, oh, well, Facebook just wants to take your money and then they're going to go show your ads to the wrong people on purpose, things like that.
That's super interesting. And I hear that because I tend to work in the social impact space. I work with a lot of nonprofit founders. I work with social impact entrepreneurs who are really working to like kind of solve this social ill, like this issue. And so I'm curious if you have, and maybe you don't, maybe you do. Do you have any like specific strategies or advice or anything you'd want to say to that subset of people, like folks who are working on fundraising, for example, or folks who are working on like maybe, let's say fundraising. Have you seen fundraising and ads go together in a beautiful way?
I have worked with people who help nonprofits with fundraising, but I haven't worked specifically with the nonprofits themselves. But what I would say to them is the same thing I would say to anyone, with their own business, is almost everyone who you think should know what you do and when you're doing it, and that there's a deadline and that like now is the time. Those people don't know. Those people do not know that you're running a campaign right now, that there is a deadline. Like you feel like you're sending all these emails. You feel like you're always on social. They do not know. And so that's what I love. That's just like what I love about ads. You can actually do some things for a relatively low spend just to get the word out about something in particular without posting on social all the time. I find posting on Instagram for like promotional things to be so disheartening, because I'll post something like a new podcast episode, that has my guest and their wonderful face and like a great smart quote by them, and it'll get like 50 likes in, an hour or so. And then I'm like, hey, I'm selling something, people. And they're like 13 likes, and they're all from like my coach and my coaching people in my coaching program or something like that, So yeah, it's like the algorithm kind of punishes you or whatever. And so I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going to pay to just make sure everybody knows that the deadline is this fucking Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to open my emails. You want to put them in promotions, whatever. I am just going to get in your face with some funny little, story like things just to remind you.
I actually love that. And that can be a hard pill to swallow when you're working with folks on their marketing and their outreach and their visibility, because people think that they have like really saturated, that they think that they have gotten their message out. And the reality is you're right. Like nobody knows. If you say it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, nobody knows. You have to really, really, really get in front of people's faces. And there's a way to do that in a way that's fun, like you said, and that works. So I see that. I see that. I'm always curious, and you started talking about this a little bit before, but I'm always curious about how like businesses evolve, how business growth emerges, right? And so you've offered the Lead Lab for a long time. My friend Rachel went through that program. She connected us together. And now you're transitioning to Get Paid Marketing. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit just like about that journey? How did you know it was time to pivot and why?
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to talk about this. I actually didn't run the lead lab for all that long. I launched at the beginning of 2021. I went on maternity leave. My son was born July 2020. The pandemic hit right before that. So, I didn't really have a lot of time to sort of pivot then. So I took a nice long maternity leave and came back and I was like, all right, I want to go high ticket because ad costs, mainly because of ad costs. Like what I said, like I was paying $2,000 to get $1,000 sale. Well, I just like, okay, what's the answer? You don't give them $1,000 product. You give them a $6,000 product or something like that, So I launched the Lead Lab and I spent like for the first half of the year, especially like when Rachel was in it, she got in there very early. She was wonderful. She worked really hard. People were like seeing results and things, right? And then what I call the hot vac summer, which I didn't make up. Somebody else on TikTok probably said it. But the hot vac summer occurred and it seemed like most people in online business who are sort of used to a certain level of revenue, they were seeing revenues drop. People were just not seeing the sales that they had kind of gotten used to, like in lockdown. People were leaving their houses and, going out and doing things. They were vaccinated or they were just like, whatever, fuck COVID. And we're just going out of the house. And so I kept seeing this and it seemed to get like worse and worse throughout the summer. And I found myself having to give people bad news a lot. My clients, like I have this one client, I just interviewed her on the show, actually, Jamie, and she came in like with this dream of having an evergreen funnel that just like basically printed money. That's what we all want from an evergreen funnel. And like, she couldn't even get it to break even. And I was like, yeah, friend, it might not ever. And, there might have been some crying. But I felt like shit after every one of those calls. And what's funny is end of the year, we started seeing a real change. End of the year and beginning of the year. It's like, woo, results are back. This is exciting. But by then we'd already had the whistleblower talking about how Facebook is such a terrible fucking company.
Right. Mark Zuckerberg said Congress. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, him in Congress is just like always. I swear to God, it has been something every 6 months with that company since I have been running my business, but it just felt terrible. And for me to constantly have to be the bearer of bad news, it was sucking dry my ability to sell the program. I stopped selling it. I stopped kind of making money that wasn't coming in on payment plans. And I took kind of like a month off. I was still coaching my clients, but that was about it. And was just sort of like thinking about like, what could I do? So what could I do if it weren't Facebook ads? Because I didn't feel like Facebook ads were going to be the long-term, business for me. And it's like, okay, well, I could make this change now, or I could make it 2 years from now or 10 years from now. But so I decided just to open up 10 one-off coaching calls with me where people could talk to me about anything that wasn't ads. Like we could talk about ads, but I wasn't going to look at their ads manager, which is, something that I've been doing for 8 years in business now, is poking around people's results and things and telling them what to do. And I think were you already a listener at this point when I announced this?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I only announced it to the podcast.
Oh.
So it was like, hey, you all are you are my people. You might not be on my list, but so many of you have been with me. So here, $350 for an hour. And the spots sold out in a day or two.
Yeah, I believe it.
2 days max. And from those conversations, which was like everybody, so many of the people that I spoke to were like, launches are like harder and harder. Ads are really hard. Or they're like, things are going good, but I just need more eyeballs. I just need more eyeballs. So some people are like, I actually was about to join the lead lab because I want to dip my toes into ads finally. So my copy coach and I hired a copy coach to help support my clients in the lead lab because ad copy, landing page copy, sales page copy, all of that is really, really important if you're going to be putting money into ads to maximize your ROI. The better your copy is, the more likely it is you're going to make sales. So we put our heads together and we're like, okay, well, how can we support people in more than just ads? And that it basically, the lead lab was tweaked a little bit and became get paid marketing. So people still come to me and they apply because they're ready for ads or they're ready to bring ads in-house. But we've also had a lot of people just be like, hey, you know what? I actually need an evergreen funnel, but I don't know what the topic should be.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, let's test that actually before we do anything, because you don't want to run ads to the wrong evergreen funnel or, like I accidentally created $1 million business, but ads aren't working for me the way they used to. So like, what next? So I've literally been helping one client actually learn what a launch is. Like that to me is funny because I feel like everyone who comes to me knows that, but how do you get $1 million business accidentally? You can do it without launching, apparently.
Hey, if anything you're hearing today inspires you to get more visible as a go-to trusted voice for your audience and drive change towards your deeper mission, I've got something for you. LinkedIn is my favorite place to share my stories and build relationships with my co-conspirators and brand new friends. So I put together a free resource with 14 prompts to create your next post on LinkedIn. Take all the guesswork out of what to say and just start building your impact and influence. Be sure to tag me in your post so I can come by, cheer you on, and amplify your message. You can find those free prompts in the show notes. Okay, back to the episode.
So it just became a way for me to like flex my marketing muscles a little bit more to appeal to more people, because it didn't just have to be the people who I convinced that ads were the thing. But now we look even deeper at like messaging and positioning and copy. So that's like an even bigger role than it was in the lead lab. And we talk about strategy. We talk about ads. We have a specific call called the hard shit. Yeah. THS, the hard, just like
I love that.
hiring or mindset or things like that. And yeah, so there's sort of like a call for a bunch of different little topics, and that way people can come and get what they need.
Right.
Not everyone is working on the same thing, which I might change in the future because it does make the program harder to run when everybody's kind of doing their own thing. But for now, it's really working.
I love that. So it's like, it's more comprehensive. It's more holistic. It's kind of the evolution. It's like I said, it's the evolution. It's almost like more of like a mastermind maybe than like a group coaching program.
It's weird, and it makes it a little bit difficult to sell because I can't quite describe it. It is like a mastermind. It is like a group coaching program, and it is like one-on-one consulting because I create marketing plan for the people, for each individual client. Then we have some courses that help people implement some of the things on those plans. But like I did a call recently with one of the clients because I really thought that she should explore Reddit ads. So that was a one-on-one call, but anyone can now go and watch the recording of that. I know that we'll be including Google ads for one of the clients who came in, and at this point, like these are still sort of my early adopters, and we're doing a lot of one-on-one coaching or just like consulting with our clients now because we can. And because it helps us figure out, again, like what do people need? What is the content that we might create in order to make it more of like, okay, this is a curriculum. Right now, it's coaching and consulting with a shit ton of resources available for people to go and learn what they need to learn.
Yeah. And I love that though, because you're creating like a library. You're creating a knowledge repository that's going to be hugely, hugely helpful. Which, I have a question around your practices around knowledge sharing, right? Because so it's May 2nd as we record this. You're in the middle of a launch for Webinar Magic, and you just had a super informative episode on your podcast. Like I listened to it this weekend, and I think it outlined a lot of what will be covered in this paid course. So I guess my question becomes, how do you decide what is paid content, what is free gated content, and what is just like free open social content?
Okay. Well, one, there's like almost no social content.
Yeah.
Because I just don't do it.
Yeah. You're actually, now that you say that, you're right. You don't have a lot of social content, but you have a lot of like, I still feel super connected to you because your podcast is so, I guess let's say your podcast is the free open content then.
Yes. Right. Okay. So that was a very deliberate choice, that episode and the episode before it about like launch strategies, paid versus free. But what I actually taught in that episode that you're referring to was the whole strategy that we teach in the Lead Lab, which is now inside Get Paid Marketing. But one of the steps of that, it's actually the first step and the last step, is to create a paid live workshop. But did I really give you very much of the how-to on doing that?
It wasn't as much of the how-to now that I think about it. It was a lot of like the strategy itself, like holistically, but not, like, I wouldn't know how to do it if I had just listened to the podcast episode.
Right. I actually did in 2020, before I came out with Workshop Magic, when I like created these paid live workshops out of a total need, out of my evergreen funnel, which was doing very well at the time, just stopped for 3 weeks in March 2020. And I was like, holy shit, am I ever going to make another sale? I'm going on maternity leave. I need some dough. I actually did a podcast episode where I literally outlined every single thing that I did, everything that I ended up teaching in Workshop Magic. I have since taken down that episode because that was too much. But yeah, like this, I have sort of gotten more comfortable with sharing the strategy. Whereas in the beginning, I used to share the how-to, and then people would walk away from my webinars or whatever with everything they needed.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, Claire is great, but I think I'm going to try what she just taught me before I, go ahead and invest. That's actually literally what happened with Workshop Magic. Somebody, after listening to that podcast episode, said, I just did it. I did exactly what you explained. And I was like, all right, I'm making a course on this. That's for sure. And so yeah, like I used to think, we really have to gatekeep the strategy too. Maybe some just how-tos, because if you go through it's hard to go through my blog now, but if you just went through years and years, pages and pages ago, you would see it's just all like, okay, step 1 in the ads manager, do this. Step 2, do this. And I have definitely shifted away from the how-to and more about sharing the strategy, because I also think that creates, I think it does 2 things. It creates like some goodwill between me and my listeners, just like giving that entire strategy away if somebody feels like they can go implement that by themselves. Because I certainly have a lot of listeners, just like, Jordan Gill, who was on your show, who they are just very skilled. They can take a strategy and figure it out themselves. But so I think it creates goodwill. And it also, I think, shows off my brain. And that's the thing you buy now. That's the thing when you join Get Paid Marketing, is you're essentially buying access to my brain. Also, my very clear instructions on things that are hard. That's something I'm really good at, and why my Facebook ad course, Absolute FB Ads, has been very, very popular. But now at this price point, and we're talking about a $9,000 program that's 6 months long, you're coming in to get my brain on your business. And that's what I love doing. So I want to show off that brain and then have you go, okay, well, if this is what she's doing, in general, imagine what she can do for my specific, because maybe this strategy isn't right for my specific business, or maybe it needs to be tweaked, and it probably does need to be tweaked.
That's exactly right. I mean, you just said it. It's like, if she's giving this away for free, if she's just giving this to me, out of the kindness of her heart, imagine what I could get in her program with other people who are also going through the same thing. So I think that's exactly what it is. I think you're exhibiting generosity, and you're creating that trusting relationship with your people. So I love that. I love that.
My friend Shantae Cofield, who's been on the show a few times, she's known as the Movement Maestro on Instagram. On the first time she came on my show, she talked about it being like creating an imbalance. I don't think imbalance was the word that she used, but it was about like giving and giving and giving and giving to the point where this doesn't feel right anymore. So that then when you do give people an opportunity to invest with you, I most certainly have bought people's courses or things or supported them on Patreon or whatever, just to give them money for their good work.
Right.
Just to be like, this is incredible. Thank you. Thank you for having your podcast or whatever, because it has impacted my life. And then, hey, if there's like that, this is what I did with Rachel Rogers. She was on my show a couple of times, but I absolutely joined her membership. We Should All Be Millionaires, the club.
But yep.
To just support her. Like I was about to go on maternity leave and I was like, there's no way I want to join a membership right now. But she was going for her first $1 million month. And I was like, take it, take my money. And that turned out to be the most incredible investment ever, because her content just like rocked my world.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly it. Like the universe just balances it out. Like if you give and give and give, you will receive back tenfold, and you don't always know where it's coming from, right? Like that's a perfect example you just shared. Or maybe you would refer her to 5 of your friends and 3 of them joined. You just never know. But being a good person pays off.
Mm-hmm.
So Claire, as we wrap up, I love asking all of my guests with this question, which is like, what is your big dreamy vision for the world? As you continue doing your work in the world, how do you hope the world changes as a result?
I don't think about my impact in the world. Truth be told, I am in this business for me.
Yeah.
I find it so intellectually stimulating. I also love money. And so really I'm doing this for me. I did recently in therapy talk about how sometimes I feel like I wish I had more of an impact. And then I realized, oh, the impact is just the show, right? It's free for everyone. It's not always easy for us as a business to produce. It takes away from lots of other projects, but it is having an impact. And so, but I don't think about how it changes the world. I think I've never been somebody who like is really about visioning at all. Maybe one day I will be, but I have to say maybe like once my kids are older or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything that I've achieved now, I never dreamt I could possibly achieve. So then the fact that there sometimes feels pressure to like continue to grow, that right there is sort of like enough to keep me occupied. So yeah, I'm one of those people who don't have a great answer for that question.
That's okay. Because I see the podcast making an impact. Like I see it happening, whether it's intentional or not. And I see it leading to pay equity, right? And greater self-confidence for female entrepreneurs, or just entrepreneurs in general, not even just females, but a greater confidence.
I'll take female entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That would be great. Greater confidence in female entrepreneurs. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, whether it's intentional or not, it's happening. It's happening in real time and I'm seeing it. So I love it. I've loved this conversation, Claire. I want to know, like, how can people get in touch with you? How can they work with you? Where can they find you online?
Yeah. So it's funny. I always say like, DM me on Instagram. And then I'm like, oh my God, what do I say to this DM? I am sort of the weirdest when it comes to that. I will frequently have a call to action on my show to like, DM me your thoughts on this. And then I get like a slew of people DMing me. I'm like, what are they doing? I will have forgotten that. I will. And I'm terrible. I am terrible. Usually I figure it out before I'm like, what? Why are you telling me this? No, really the best thing would be listen to the show.
Yep.
Because, like there's so many, we're coming up on 200 episodes now. There are so many great conversations. And then if you like the show, the biggest thing that you can do for me is share it with other people. You can do that publicly on social media. You can do that privately. I am not great about sharing it myself. I prefer to just let the ads do the work. round the clock in my sleep so I don't have to come up with a pithy caption. But if you want to share it for me, that would be incredible. If you want to work with me, if you're interested in ads or just interested in like getting more eyeballs on your stuff, you can always come to my site, clairepells.com. Usually whatever we're like promoting, we're talking about on the podcast, I'm doing a much more deliberate job this year of being like, hey, FYI, this is how you can pay me. I didn't used to do that at all.
I wholeheartedly support that. And we're going to put all those links in the show notes, especially the link to the Get Paid podcast. Because people, I got to tell you, like I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is one of the best podcasts. If you are interested at all about online businesses, how they work, how they tick, unveiling the cover behind them, seeing how they come together, this is the podcast you want to listen to. So run, don't walk.
What have some of your favorite episodes been? Just so like people know, because 200, that's sort of a lot.
I know. I mean, so many. So again, one of my favorite ones was the one about focus sessions because it was just like such an aha, like that is such a good business idea, right? The one obviously with Jordan, because I worked with her for 6 months. That one was super helpful.
That was like a 2-hour interview that we literally recorded in
2 sessions.
2 different.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I remember you guys
couldn't stop asking her questions.
I love it. You ask great questions. And I think that's a huge skill set, right? That's a huge skill set. So those two come to mind immediately. But honestly, I think I've learned something in every single one. At least one thing. I've walked away from every single episode with an aha moment that I could implement or at least like have fester in my mind, which usually let other things emerge, like a new way of doing things, a new way of asking for things, a new way of positioning things. Like it's just such a wealth of information. So I love it.
Cool. I will shout out one other episode that I heard a lot of feedback about, which was Courtney Sanders. She's also been on the show twice, but it was the more recent episode. We do a series every once in a while called Where Are They Now? Because everyone's business has changed so much. Megan Flatt about the focus sessions was also like a Where Are They Now episode. But Courtney Sanders, where she talks about having a $50,000 offer.
Wow.
Like what she sells is $50K. And that just like blew people's minds. And I think it's really important that we realize, oh yeah, that's allowed. Not just as possible, it's allowed.
Yes, it's allowed. It goes back to that paradigm shift of expanding what's possible for us. We need to hear that people are doing that and being successful at that. Maybe not need to. I think some of us could get there without it, but it definitely helps. Definitely helps hearing that.
For sure.
Yeah. Claire, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an awesome conversation. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you think? Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or even better, reach out and let me know through lumosmarketing.co. Yes, that's Lumos, as in the illumination spell from Harry Potter. Because when you shine, magical things happen. You can get social with me on LinkedIn, and of course, check out the show notes to stay in touch with our guests. Let's talk soon.